Naomi Price wiped the sweat from her brow as the morning sun filtered through the half-built walls of the construction site. She gripped the worn broom handle, methodically sweeping the scattered dust and debris with steady, unhurried movements. Despite the chill from the early hour, a thin layer of grime clung to her jeans, and her plain sweatshirt was smudged from the day's work. Naomi's dark hair was pulled back tightly, strands escaping here and there, framing her face, weary yet determined. The hum of machinery and chatter from the workers filled the air, but she focused on her task, knowing the inspections later would demand a spotless site. Jack, the site's foreman, appeared out of nowhere, his boots crunching loudly against the gravel. He was a broad-shouldered man with a stubbled jaw and a scowl that seemed permanently etched into his face. His blue hard hat sat crooked as he scanned the site, his eyes settling on Naomi. A cold smirk crossed his lips. He'd seen her around before, just a cleaner, too slow, too out of place among the burly men and skilled tradespeople. "Hey, Price," he called out, loud enough for the nearby crew to hear. "Thought cleaning was supposed to be quick work. What's taking you so long?" "Slower than a snail on a cold day." His voice dripped with mockery as he stepped closer, watching her struggle to reach a stubborn cobweb tucked in the corner of an unfinished beam. Naomi paused, the broom in midair, feeling the sting of all the eyes turning toward her. The heavy machinery idled in the background, but for a moment, everything fell silent except Jack's sneer. The crew around them chuckled, exchanging glances. Jack's tone sharpened. "This is a construction site, not some afternoon tea club. Maybe cleaning isn't your game after all." Jack's words hung in the dusty air like a bitter gust, settling on Naomi with the weight of humiliation. She lowered her broom slowly, muscles tightening against the hot flush rising in her cheeks. The laughter spilling from the workers was sharp and cruel, a barrage she wasn't prepared to deflect after hours of focused work. The grins and whispered jabs made her feel smaller, less worthy in a place where strength and skill were valued above all. Naomi's gaze darted downward, her fingers clutching the broom handle a little too tightly. She fought the urge to straighten her back, to retort with venom, but the knot in her throat tightened. This was Jack's territory, and his jibes were weapons wielded without mercy. She was just the cleaner, the outsider, the easy target. Behind Jack, a few workers chuckled ceaselessly. One of them, a tall, wiry youngster named Tom, elbowed a friend and nodded toward Naomi with a mock expression of sympathy. "She's out of her depth," Tom murmured loudly enough to be heard. "Should have left this job to someone who knows what they're doing." Naomi's breath hitched. It was more than just idle teasing, it was a dismissal of her efforts, her presence, her very right to be there. She swallowed hard and tried to focus on the task in front of her, attempting to ignore the burning eyes scrutinizing her every move. But Jack was relentless. He stepped into her space, towering over her slight frame, voice dropping to a sly, condescending tone. "Tell you what, why don't you quit fumbling with that broom and take a break? Let the real crew handle what needs doing." He jerked his thumb toward the heavy steel beams, the intricate latticework in need of inspection. Naomi looked up, anger flickering behind the shame. "I'm doing my job," she said quietly but firmly. "Aren't you?" Jack scoffed, folding his arms. "Come on, Naomi. Everyone here knows you don't belong on this team. You're just in the way." A ripple of laughter shot through the group, louder this time. Heads turned to watch, eyes sparkling with amusement and judgment. Naomi's heart pounded painfully, her ears burning hotter. She could feel the weight of their gazes, dissecting her, labeling her as useless and insignificant. Some workers shifted uncomfortably, casting glance at Naomi with hesitance. Mark, a seasoned carpenter with a kind face, exchanged a glance with Lisa, one of the ironworkers nearby. Both seemed unsettled, but silent, not wanting to invite Jack's wrath by speaking up. Naomi could feel tears threatening to spill, frustration and humiliation tightening their grip. This wasn't the first time she'd been ignored or belittled, but the day's exhaustion made it sting deeper. She glanced at the broom in her hands, a tool as simple as it was necessary, yet somehow a symbol of her marginalization. Trying to hold on to composure, she bit her lip and bent to resume sweeping. But Jack's voice cut through again. "No," he said sharply. "You're done here." "What?" Naomi asked, surprised. "You heard me," Jack said, motioning toward a younger worker who was finishing his break nearby. "Tom, take over." "Naomi, pack it up and get moving." Tom grinned, clearly pleased to be given authority despite his youth, and stepped forward to grab the broom. Naomi pulled it back a step, clutching it in defiance. "I'm not done yet." "Don't make this harder than it is," Jack warned. "You're a distraction. You're just slowing things down." Naomi's hands trembled, caught between standing her ground and the overwhelming burden of everyone's eyes locked on her. The crew's laughter morphed into whispers, some sneering, others curious but hesitant. She could almost hear them thinking, "The cleaner who can't even clean properly." What a joke. Mark finally stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Jack, maybe she should finish. It's her shift after all." Jack turned sharply toward him, eyes narrowing. "Thanks for the suggestion, Mark, but this is my site. I know what's best." He glanced at Naomi with a sneer. "We all do." Naomi looked down, the broom slipping from her grasp and thudding onto the concrete floor. Her chest tightened, breath short and uneven. She felt the hard sting of tears now, hot and unwanted, beginning to blur her vision. She pushed herself upright, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm going home." She grabbed her bag from a nearby crate, the slow scrape of her worn boots on the gravel echoing louder than usual in the growing silence. Jack's voice echoed after her. "Hey! You're not going anywhere until the job's done. I said you stay." Naomi froze, the grip on her bag tightening as conflicting waves of fear and anger surged through her. The crew stopped their laughter, eyes swinging between her and the foreman. The moment stretched taut, every heartbeat thundering loudly in her ears. One of the ironworkers, Lisa, shook her head slowly and muttered, "This isn't right," but no one stepped forward to challenge Jack openly. It was as if the entire site was holding its breath, watching to see what Naomi would do next. Jack raised his voice, gleaming with triumph at the attention. "Everyone, look alive. Naomi's not capable of finishing what's on her plate. Let's see if she can even handle this part." He nodded at a complicated tangle of support beams and scaffolding in the corner, glassy eyes daring her to prove herself. The crew snapped their heads toward Naomi, all eyes sharp, some with suspicion, others with amusement. The laughter that had simmered earlier started to build again, a wave rolling in to engulf her. Naomi stood motionless, feeling like the whole world had shrunk to this one point of tension. The coarse dust on the floor, the roar of distant machines, the weight of judgment pressing down on her. Her legs felt like lead beneath the expectant gaze, the moment where she could either back down, bow to the humiliation, or stand and face the challenge. But the room felt heavy with expectation, and Naomi's heart hammered faster than ever before. What would you do if you were in Naomi's place? Would you walk away, letting the insults sink in? Or would you rise and prove them wrong against all odds? Naomi's breath came in shallow bursts, but instead of retreating, she squared her shoulders and took a step forward. The crew's amusement rippled across the site like a low growl, but Naomi's resolve had begun to harden into something stronger than fear or doubt. Near the scaffolding where Jack had pointed, a set of blueprints lay rolled open on a steel beam. Naomi's eyes flicked to them, and her fingers itched to reach out. Taking a slow, deliberate breath, she stepped toward the plans, her boots crunching softly over the scattered gravel. The murmurs around her softened, a few workers exchanged uncertain glances, the earlier bravado giving way to curiosity. Jack's smirk faltered for a moment as he watched her approach the blueprints, an unspoken question hanging in the air. "What are you doing?" he barked, masking surprise with irritation. Naomi didn't answer, instead crouching to study the technical drawings laid out before her. Her eyes swept carefully over the pages, noting details only someone familiar with structural engineering would catch: the precise angles of beams, the weight distributions, and the critical measurements that ensured the building's integrity. Fingers tracing a diagonal column on the page, she looked up, steady and clear. "This beam here," she said, pointing, "it's not aligned correctly. If installed like this, it'll compromise the load balance. The bolts specified aren't strong enough for that section." The sudden solidity in Naomi's voice caused a reverberation of shocked whispers among the gathered workers. Mark narrowed his eyes, stepping closer to the plans and nodding slowly. "Wait, that's the section we were supposed to finish welding today, isn't it?" Naomi nodded, eyes on Jack. "Yeah, if it's left as is, that corner could become unstable. It needs realigning and reinforced bolts. I noticed a similar problem in a project I worked on before. It's a common mistake when specs aren't double-checked." The laughter evaporated, replaced by a heavy silence. Even Tom looked uncertain, his mouth slightly open as if about to protest or apologize. Jack's jaw tightened, and for a moment he said nothing, his usual glare replaced by blank surprise. Lisa's voice broke the quiet. "Are you sure about this, Naomi?" Naomi's lips pressed into a thin line. "I am. I've seen this kind of error before. Ignoring it risks structural failure." Jack cleared his throat, very aware of all eyes now trained on him and Naomi. "Well, if you're so confident, why don't you show us how to fix it?" A small smile flickered at the corner of Naomi's mouth. She nodded, rising to her feet and stepping toward the steel framework. The workers parted, creating a path as if instinctively sensing the change in momentum. Jack's voice barely masked his unease. "Fine. But don't make us wait." Naomi crouched near the base of the beam, her hands brushing away dust and grease as she examined the connection points. She pointed to small gaps where the welds had missed their mark and where bolts were precariously fastened. The beam should be shifted about 6 inches left, then secured with grade 8 bolts, stronger than the grade 5 PVCs here. Tom, who had just regained some confidence, nodded skeptically. "You think we can move it without tearing down the whole section?" "Easier than fixing a collapse later," Naomi replied, steady and assured. She motioned to Mark. "Give me a wrench and new bolts." Mark hurried to a nearby tool cart, returning with the requested items, while the other workers gathered closer to watch the process unfold. Naomi's familiarity with the mechanical aspects and structural standards became obvious as she worked methodically, her hands sure and practiced. She directed Tom to reposition the beam carefully, explaining the importance of gradual adjustments to avoid warping the metal. Slowly, the misplaced beam shifted, then locked into place as the bolts were tightened with a decisive turn. The whole site seemed to exhale collectively as the correction took shape. Naomi stood up, brushing dust from her knees, meeting Jack's gaze without flinching. "Well," Jack said finally, voice low and reluctant, "that was impressive." The crew erupted into murmurs, many nodding and exchanging looks of newfound respect. Lisa clapped her hands softly, breaking the spell. "Good eye, Naomi." Naomi felt a swell of relief but kept her expression calm. "I just did what anyone responsible should." Tom grinned sheepishly. "Guess I was wrong about you." Mark added, "Better to have you on this side than dismiss you out of hand." Jack's jaw clenched as he stepped back, no longer the imperious foreman but a man confronted by undeniable proof. The shift in atmosphere was tangible, a quiet admiration replacing mockery. Suddenly, the crew's laughter returned, but this time it was directed sharply at Tom, whose earlier swagger was quickly deflating. "Looks like you were the one out of your depth," Lisa teased, earning nods and chuckles. Naomi glanced around, seeing the changed expressions, the awkward smiles, the tentative nods of approval, even Jack's grudging respect buried beneath his gruff exterior. It was as though a veil had lifted, revealing the strength beneath the dust and the quiet determination in her eyes. As the crew resumed their chatter, now peppered with questions for Naomi about the plans and construction techniques, Jack swallowed hard, knowing he'd lost this round but unwilling to fully concede. Naomi felt a spark of something she hadn't allowed herself before: hope. The moment was far from over, but she had cracked the shell of judgment that had been forced upon her. She folded the blueprint carefully, tucking it under her arm. Around her, the worksite was alive again, but the energy had shifted. For once, Naomi wasn't just the cleaner in the background, she was someone whose knowledge and skills could no longer be ignored. As the murmurs of admiration rippled through the crew, Naomi stood quietly, watching the subtle shift in their demeanor. The light dust on her jeans and shirt now seemed less a mark of insignificance and more a badge of honest labor. But beneath the pride, there was a deeper story, one the others had yet to glimpse. Later that afternoon, as the crew took a well-earned break in the shade of a steel beam framework, Naomi sat on a cooler beside Mark and Lisa, the two workers who had shown a flicker of understanding earlier. The noise of the construction ebbed into a low hum around them, punctuated by occasional clangs and shouted instructions. Mark was the first to speak, his voice low and curious. "Naomi, I've gotta ask, you didn't just come out of nowhere with all that knowledge. What's your story?" Naomi let out a soft laugh, one usually reserved for moments of quiet reflection. "I'm not what I seem to be here," she said, her eyes glancing at the dirt beneath her nails. "I used to work as a structural engineer. For years. On big projects, in offices with polished floors and endless meetings." Lisa raised a brow, astonished by the contrast with the woman in front of her. "Then why are you cleaning here? Why not stay in that kind of job?" Naomi's gaze drifted to the complex web of steel around them as if seeking answers in the unfinished structure itself. "Life sometimes throws unexpected challenges. My mother fell ill, needed constant care. I couldn't leave her alone at home, and my old job demanded too much travel and time away. So I stepped away to help her and to keep things afloat." Mark nodded slowly, empathy softening his usual straightforward manner. "So the cleaning job, was it just what you could do at the time?" "Exactly," Naomi said, voice steady but revealing a hint of vulnerability. "It paid the bills, gave me hours flexible enough to be there for my mom. But it didn't mean I stopped learning. I've been taking night classes in construction management with hopes of getting back into the field." Lisa's eyes gleamed with respect. "All this time, you were doing two jobs, taking care of your mom and keeping your skills sharp." Naomi smiled faintly. "You have to, don't you? No one's going to hand you opportunities if you stop trying." Mark chuckled, shaking his head. "You're the strongest person here, Mo. I always thought construction was just brute strength and sweating it out, but you've got brains and heart both." The moment felt like a quiet unveiling, Naomi's hidden strength laid bare in the gentle camaraderie of those who were once strangers. The simplicity of her worn clothes and dusty hands now made perfect sense. They symbolized sacrifice and resilience, not lack of ability. Jack watched from a distance, leaning against a steel beam with arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Though he didn't join the conversation, he couldn't help but feel a grudging respect building inside him. This woman he had mocked, underestimated, and tried to push out had revealed talents and a history he'd never imagined. It unsettled him, the realization that he'd let bias cloud his judgment had been harsh. Yet, beneath the surface, he fought off the sting of having been bested. Late in the day, as the sun dipped lower behind the skeletal frame of the building, Naomi prepared to leave the site. Workers gathered their tools and equipment, the buzz of the day winding down into a calm rhythm. Jack approached, his stride slow but purposeful. The crew watched silently as he stopped in front of Naomi. "Look, Naomi," he said, voice quieter than before, stripped of its usual arrogance. "I owe you an apology. I was wrong about you, and I let my assumptions get the better of me. You didn't just clean the site well today, you showed skill none of us expected." Naomi met his gaze, surprised at the sincerity in his tone. "Thank you, Jack." He hesitated, then added, "If you want, there's a spot opening in the project management assistant role next week. It's a step up from cleaning, and I think you'd be good at it." Naomi's mouth parted in a mix of surprise and gratitude. "I'd like that. A lot." Jack nodded, biting back any sign of vulnerability. "Good. I'll send the paperwork to HR tomorrow. Just, don't let it go to your head." His grin was awkward but genuine. The crew around them broke into scattered applause, and Naomi found herself smiling wide, not because of the recognition, but because for the first time she felt truly seen. As she packed her bag and glanced back at the emptying site, she knew the journey ahead was still filled with challenges. But beneath the fatigue and the dust, a quiet strength had taken root. Her story, once hidden and misunderstood, was unfolding beneath the rising frame of the building, and this time, she was ready to build a future on her own terms. The following morning dawned crisp and clear, the sky painted with soft shades of pale blue and the golden touch of early sunlight. The construction site buzzed with renewed energy, workers arriving with purposeful strides and focused intent. Naomi arrived just after sunrise, a fresh sense of determination warming her from within, despite the chill in the air. She carried herself with a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before, one born from the acknowledgement of her own abilities and the tentative respect she had earned. Jack paced near the tool shed when Naomi approached, his expression less guarded this time. The harshness had faded somewhat, replaced by a grudging respect and a touch of uncertainty. His usual rough demeanor had softened around the edges as he prepared to face the consequences of the previous day's events. "Morning," Jack greeted her, nodding curtly. "Morning," Naomi replied smoothly, her smile subtle but sincere. Jack cleared his throat. "I wanted to talk about what happened yesterday, and more. After the crews saw what you did, and after I thought it over, I realized I was out of line. I've spoken to the site supervisors, and they agree, you earned more than just an apology." Naomi listened attentively, the tension in her shoulders easing. "Effective immediately," Jack continued, "you'll be promoted to project management assistant. It's an entry-level step, but it's the kind of role you've been preparing for. You'll be working alongside the engineers and supervisors, helping with plans and inspections." A warm wave of validation washed over Naomi. Years of juggling responsibilities, long nights studying, and sacrifices she had made seemed suddenly to culminate in this moment. But she didn't immediately let her emotions show. "Thank you, Jack. I appreciate the opportunity," she said, steady and gracious. Jack nodded, then added, "Also, I'm sorry for the way I treated you. I acted unfairly, and I hope you can forgive me." Naomi considered him for a moment. The man who had mocked and belittled her was here now taking accountability. It wasn't easy to accept, but it was the right step. "I accept your apology," she said with quiet strength. Over the next few days, Naomi's role shifted dramatically. No longer the invisible cleaner, she now found herself in meetings, poring over blueprints and schedules, her keen analytical mind engaged and respected. The crew's attitude toward her transformed as well. Tom, who had previously mocked her, often sought her advice. Mark and Lisa became trusted allies, and even Jack occasionally asked her input when challenges arose. Not all was smooth sailing. There were moments when Naomi felt the old tension simmer beneath the surface. Some still doubted her place, hesitant to let go of their preconceived ideas. But Naomi met those moments with patience and professionalism, proving her value consistently. One afternoon, as Naomi reviewed a set of plans alongside Mark, he remarked, "You've changed the way this team thinks. I don't know anyone else who could have handled that situation so calmly and confidently." Naomi smiled, the daily toll of the work fading behind a quiet satisfaction. Sometimes you have to show them who you really are, even if it's uncomfortable at first. Meanwhile, Jack's own journey was becoming more complicated. Facing the company's upper management, he had been reprimanded for his earlier conduct, the dismissive attitude, the unfair treatment of Naomi. The site supervisors insisted on a formal meeting to address the workplace dynamics and Jack's leadership style. In private, Jack wrestled with the sting of the reprimand and the begrudging recognition that his biases had cost him credibility. It was a humbling experience. Rather than resist, he chose to listen, learning that respect and understanding were critical leadership traits, qualities he had neglected. In a rare gesture of goodwill, Jack arranged a small meeting with Naomi, offering a written letter of apology and a modest financial compensation for the undue stress caused. Naomi reviewed the letter, recognizing the sincerity beneath the formal words. While she didn't seek compensation, the gesture felt like closure, a symbol that growth and change were possible. On her first official day as project management assistant, Naomi walked onto the site with a steady stride, no longer just a background figure. Workers greeted her with smiles and nods, their respect clear. The blueprints she carried were no longer a distant dream, they were instruments of her purpose. At noon, the crew gathered briefly near the break area, and Naomi found herself surrounded by colleagues who had once seen her as insignificant but now regarded her as integral. Tom approached with an apologetic smile. "Hey, Naomi. Just wanted to say thanks for showing me it's not about where you start, but what you bring to the table." Mark clapped her firmly on the back. "Couldn't have said it better." Lisa chimed in, "You've set a new standard for all of us." Naomi's eyes shimmered, touched by the genuine warmth in their voices. "I'm grateful for all of you. It means a lot." As the group dispersed back to their tasks, Naomi paused and looked back at the skeletal frame of the building rising against the sky. The day's light caught the steel beams, casting sharp shadows. Each beam seemed a metaphor for the support structures not only in construction but in life itself, the connections between people built on trust, respect, and acknowledgement. That evening, in the quiet of her modest apartment, Naomi reflected on the journey she had taken. From a marginalized cleaner subjected to mockery, to a respected professional stepping into her rightful place, the path had been challenging yet transformative. She reached for her phone and typed a message to a small online group of women in construction management she had been following, a community of support she had long admired but never dared join. "Today, I stepped forward. I'm ready to build more than just buildings now." As she sent the message, a smile spread across her face, the kind that comes with knowing you have reclaimed your story. For on sites everywhere, the scaffolding of respect is built piece by piece, and Naomi Price had just laid her strongest beam yet. What would you have done if you were Naomi? Would you have let the insult stay, or stood your ground and shown your worth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe, and see you in our next story.